Her name was Dorothy. In 50 years of running a household, she never once waited to feel ready. Not one morning, not one winter Tuesday when the pipes had frozen and the children were sick and her husband had already left for work in the dark. She got up, she made breakfast, she did the work. Her granddaughter once asked her, late in her life, how she managed it, how she kept going day after day without ever seeming to need a reason to start. Dorothy looked confused by the question. She said, "I don't understand what you mean." Her granddaughter tried to explain. Motivation. That feeling you wait for before you can begin. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I never waited for a feeling. The work was just there." Today, the self-help and personal development industry is worth over $40 billion. The largest single category within it is productivity and motivation. Books, courses, apps, coaches, systems, all designed to help people start the things they already know they need to do. Dorothy never bought a single book from that shelf. She never needed to. Her granddaughter has bought many. She owns 4 planners, 2 accountability apps, and a morning routine she redesigned 3 times last year. She still struggles to begin. Dorothy never struggled to begin. What Dorothy had were 10 habits so ordinary she would never have thought to call them discipline. She would have been puzzled by the word applied to herself. Nobody on her street called them anything either, because every woman on that street had them. She had no motivational podcast in her kitchen, no vision board on the wall, no goal-setting framework from a webinar, no morning routine influencer giving her cues on how to start her day. What she had were 10 habits. The habits were the part nobody sold her, because the habits were the part that actually worked. Then something changed, not the human capacity for self-discipline, not what a person actually needs to do the work that is in front of them. What changed is exactly what this video is about. Before number 10, subscribe. This channel exists to tell you exactly this kind of story, every week. Number 10. Dorothy never asked herself if she felt like doing something. The question simply did not arise. The task existed. The task was done. The space between those 2 facts contained no negotiation. This was not rigidity. It was the absence of a habit that modern life has quietly installed in almost everyone. The habit of consulting your feelings before beginning work. Behavioral psychologists call this motivational dependency, the learned expectation that action should be preceded by an internal feeling of readiness or desire. Research has found that once this expectation is established, it makes starting measurably harder over time, because the brain begins treating the feeling as a prerequisite rather than a byproduct of the work itself. Dorothy's generation never installed that expectation. The feeling, if it came at all, arrived during the work, never before. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 9. Dorothy started with the smallest possible piece of whatever needed doing. She did not think about canning 40 jars. She picked up the first jar. She did not think about a week of laundry. She picked up the first shirt. Researchers studying task initiation have found that reducing the perceived size of a starting action, what they now call minimum viable behavior, dramatically lowers the threshold for beginning, particularly for tasks that feel large or unpleasant. Dorothy never named this technique. She simply always picked up the first thing and trusted that the next thing would follow. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. We are not far from number 1, the habit the entire motivation industry was built to replace. Stay with me. Number 8. Dorothy never stopped in the middle of something she planned to finish. A task started, was a task completed before anything else began. She did not leave the pot simmering to answer a letter. She did not begin the ironing and set it aside for a conversation at the door. This was not perfectionism. It was a structural rule against fragmentation, the scattering of attention across multiple unfinished things that drains the will to return to any of them. Cognitive researchers have confirmed that unfinished tasks create persistent low-grade mental load, what they call the open loop effect, that depletes executive function over time without the person ever identifying the source of their fatigue. Dorothy closed every loop before opening a new one. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 7. Dorothy did the most unpleasant task of the day first, without allowing herself to think about it. Not the most urgent, not the easiest, the one she liked least. She began with what she was most inclined to avoid, and spent the rest of the day in the quiet relief of having done it. Research on ego depletion, the finding that self-control draws from a finite daily resource that weakens with use, consistently shows that difficult tasks are better completed early, before the resource is drawn down by smaller demands. Dorothy understood none of this terminology. She understood that unpleasant things did not improve with waiting. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 6. Dorothy never talked about what she was going to do. She simply did it. If she planned to reorganize the pantry on Tuesday, nobody heard about it until it was done. She did not announce her intentions or seek encouragement before beginning. Research on what psychologists call the substitution effect has found that telling others about a future goal creates a premature sense of social reward that measurably reduces the likelihood of following through, because the brain has already received the satisfaction of being seen as someone who will do the thing. Dorothy received no satisfaction until the thing was done. She found no other order logical. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. We are almost at number 1, the single habit the entire productivity industry was built to make you forget you already had. Almost there. Number 5. Dorothy treated routine as infrastructure, not restriction. The same tasks happened at the same times in the same order. Not because she lacked imagination, but because a predictable structure freed her from spending any energy deciding what to do next. Decision fatigue, the finding that the quality and energy available for decisions degrades steadily with the number of decisions made, is among the most replicated findings in behavioral economics. Dorothy made almost no daily decisions about what to do next. It had already been decided by the rhythm she maintained without naming it as such. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 4. Dorothy never rewarded herself for doing ordinary things. She did not give herself a treat for completing the laundry. She did not build a streak or mark a calendar for cooking dinner on time. This sounds punishing. It was actually protective. Research on what psychologists call over-justification has found that introducing external rewards for activities that are simply required, rather than chosen, gradually undermines the intrinsic discipline needed to do them, because the brain begins to require the reward before it will initiate the behavior. Dorothy's reward for finishing the laundry was clean clothes. That was the whole mechanism. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 3. Dorothy maintained her habits during the hardest weeks, not just the easy ones. When her husband was ill, she still cooked dinner at the same hour. When a child was struggling in school, she still reset the house each evening. When money was tight, she kept her routines exactly as they were. This was not cold, it was structural. She understood, without having language for it, that the hardest moments are precisely when routine matters most. Not because it solves the problem, but because it keeps the rest of life functioning while the problem is being handled. Researchers studying resilience in families under prolonged stress have identified consistent routine maintenance as one of the strongest predictors of household psychological stability during hardship. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 2. Dorothy never compared her output to anyone else's. She did not wonder whether a neighbor had accomplished more in a day. She did not measure her productivity against a standard she had read somewhere. She measured it against one thing only: whether the work that was hers to do had been done. Researchers studying self-regulation have found that social comparison of productivity is among the most reliable predictors of motivation collapse because it introduces a moving external standard that is never stably achievable. Dorothy's standard was fixed, internal, and entirely within her control. She met it nearly every day because it was calibrated to her actual life rather than to an imagined version of someone else's. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 1. Dorothy did not believe motivation was something that came before action. She believed it was something that came from it. This is the one the entire $40 billion industry cannot put in a bottle because it is not a technique or a system or a supplement. It is a belief about the order of events. Dorothy did not wait to feel ready and then act. She acted and found that the work itself had provided whatever readiness she had been waiting for. She never had a coach explain this to her as behavioral activation. She never had a book call it building momentum. She had a mother who told her once, "You will not feel like it until you have already started. So start." The modern productivity industry is built almost entirely on the opposite premise, that the right system, the right mindset, the right morning routine will generate the feeling that precedes action. Dorothy's 50 years suggest the feeling was never the point, and waiting for it was always the delay. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Dorothy passed away in 1996. She was 79 years old. Her granddaughter inherited her kitchen and found no productivity system anywhere in it. No planner, no habit tracker, no motivational quotes on the walls. There was a dish towel on its hook, a broom in its corner, a week of meals already decided in a small notebook by the stove. She had left everything in the state it would need to be in for Tuesday morning. Nobody at her funeral described her as disciplined. Nobody used that word. They said she was someone who did what she said she would do. They said she was someone who finished things. 10 habits Dorothy never named, never wrote in a book, and never once thought to call a discipline practice. She simply called it getting on with it. If you have ever waited to feel ready and never quite felt ready enough, tell me below. I read every single comment. The next video is already waiting.